Shavua Tov Boker or day 75 Bekiim Bahalacha, page 226. Yeah, 226. Right? Halacha Yod Aleph. Yeah, the cantor. We're talking about the Shliach Tzibur. The Shliach Tzibur, or anybody that says the Kaddish, should also say the sentences of Yehe, Sheme, Raba, but he does not repeat Amen. Meaning, they come and say, Amen, Yehe, Sheme, Raba. They don't do Amen, Yehe, Sheme, Raba. Yehe, Sheme, Raba. They don't repeat the Amen. Because he just told you to say Amen. V'imru Amen. You have to say Amen. But he himself does not say Amen. So he says only Yehe, Sheme, Raba.
Bosses know say amen.
Okay, very good. But some people, they don't know that. They don't know halachot. So what do you want?
The Chazan gonna say amen?
No, he's saying that you don't say amen. So he just explained it to you.
The case is like the Chazan, he tell to the
398 on the bottom. The cantor's Yeshua Rabba. The Mishnah Berurah says that the Chazan or the one that's saying the Kaddish should also say the word Yeshua Rabba Mavarach silently. And then he continues out loud with the word Yitbarach. This needs some explanation. Because why shouldn't he say it out loud, actually? With all his power, just like everybody else. He should also say it out loud. So the sponsor Az Nidbir who explained that the Mishnah Berurah means that the Chazan, or the one that's saying the Kaddish, may say Yeshua Rabba as loudly or softly as he wishes. But once he reaches the word Yitbarach, he's obligated to say it out loud. He pointed out that the source for this ruling is the Levush. And it follows the Levush's ruling regarding the response of Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo, of Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam V'ed, that he also should say this response, but he may choose to recite it silently. The Levush called up to read, right? He says, the Levush repeated this in the Siman regarding someone who's called up to read the Torah. He says he should recite the response of Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam V'ed together with the congregation, but he may recite it silently. Meaning that he also says, I say, Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam V'ed. Some people, they say, Baruch Hashem Baruch, Baruch Hashem Shabbat Mikol. No. He also say Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam V'ed. Right? The upshot of this discussion is the main reason for the person saying Kaddish to add the response of Yeshua Rabba is that he does not exclude himself from the congregation. Therefore, it's sufficient for him to recite it silently if he chooses so, which means you're also part of the Kahal. So therefore, you also have to say the Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam V'ed. You also have to say the Yeshua Rabba because you're also part of the Kahal. Okay, the question now arises, since Sephardic Jews recite the 28-word response, why must the cantor, the Chazan, say the remainder of the Kaddish out loud? As he may say the Yeshua Rabba silently, so he should be allowed to continue silently until Daminam Be'alma. Apparently, the Chazan recites the remainder of the Kaddish expressly to enable the congregation to answer after Berichu and Daminam Be'alma. For this reason, the Levush instructions for the Chazan to resume reciting out loud with Birach applies to Sephardic Jews as well. Okay? Now he says, although the congregation has recited the words Yitbarach to fulfill the instructions, right, of Rav Yosef, right, Giktalia, this word in the beginning of the sentence to which the congregation responds, and therefore the Chazan must recite it out loud. Of course, the Chazan must not pause between the words Al-Maya and Yitbarach. Like everyone else, he actually has to do it properly. So there's no pause after Al-Maya and Yitbarach. He has to make sure that he continues. Okay? Now, what happens for people who cannot respond themselves? Right? For example, they're in the middle of Amidah. So the Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Daled rule that if someone is in the middle of the Amidah and he hears Kaddish or Kedusha, yeah, so he says over here, he may not interrupt his prayers to respond. Instead, he has to stop and listen to the Chazan, right? And it will count for him as if that he responded. Obviously, this works only if the Chazan says the entire Kaddish out loud, including Yehe Sheme Raba, so that the person or the people saying Amidah can hear him. This being the case, it must be that Mishnah Berurah's ruling permitting the Chazan to say the Yehe Sheme Raba silently applies only to Kaddish recited while no one is in the middle of the Amidah. Okay, only when nobody's in the middle of the Amidah. Yeah, makes sense? Okay. The response as Nidbir rule that a person who's in the middle of the Amidah does not have to hear the Chazan reciting the response. He can fulfill his obligation by listening to a congregation responding. And this is based upon the Levush ruling, that if someone is in the middle of the Amidah and the congregation are saying the Kedusha, he should fulfill his obligation by listening to the congregation. This seems to contradict the Levush's ruling regarding Kaddish. Right? How could it be that here he's saying just listen to the congregation, and now we're saying you have to listen to the Chazan, decide who do you have to listen to? So he says, right, but he says by the Kaddish, you have to listen to the Chazan, not to the congregation. Moreover, it's not possible to fulfill, right? He comes and he says, it's not possible to fulfill, right, this obligation by listening to someone else's prayer unless he intends to recite it for the benefit of one who's listening to it. He says, right, the people in the congregation have no idea that anyone is depending upon them to respond to Kaddish or Kedusha. and so they have no intentions. Meaning this, I'm saying the Kiddusha. Do I have kavanah for, let's say, Haim, that he's in the middle of putting on a tefillin or in the middle of doing the Amidah? Obviously not. Right? If I'm the Shliach Tzibur, yes. But if I'm going to be the, in the middle of it, obviously not. What's going on? So therefore, he comes and he says, for the same reason, the Od Yosef Chai, he ruled that if the cantor does not know that he's supposed to have intentions on behalf of those listening to him, there's no reason for the people reciting them to stop and listen to him. This is likewise the ruling of the Rishon LeZion. Therefore, it's up to the Chazan to recite the response to Yehe Sheme about loud and to have intention to have everybody Yotzei Chuvah as well. So he's the Chazan. You have to get a good Chazan. The Chazan knows that he's being Motzi Yedei Chuvah, everybody, even those that are going to be in the middle of Amidah. Okay? Fine. Next halacha. Well, very important halacha. This is the majority of the Moroccans, they do this. Right? There was once a custom in some communities for congregation to recite Yigdalna Koach Hashem, Zochor Rachamecha, but the Chazan says the words of the Kaddish. According to the Arizal, we don't do that then. We do it during Barechu. However, the congregation must not recite these verses at this time, right? And the common custom nowadays is not to recite them. So, okay, there was certain minagim about saying certain psukim. Our minag is not to say that. We have other minagim. We have during the Barechu, when the Shliach Tzibur is saying Barechu, they come and they say Yishtabach Yipav V'Tumah, you say this whole pasuk, right? That they say. Obviously, again, there's different minagim. Okay, next halacha. 13, Yud Gimel. Mitzvah say the mitzvah, the correct way to fill the mitzvah of listening, responding to Kaddish, is to listen and concentrate the first words of the Kaddish. Since the Yehe Sheme Raba Mevarach is in response to those words. Okay, it is best, right, that the entire congregation listen and concentrate on all the words of the Kaddish, so that each person will come and respond, right, to the Amen with the ideas expressed in those words. Number 14. If someone walks into the Beit Knesset and finds the congregation responding Amen Yehe Sheme Raba, he should join them and say Yehe Sheme Raba Mevarach, even if he's several words behind the congregation. It is best though to skip out the first word Amen, right? To begin only with Yehe Sheme Raba. Why? Because since he did not hear, right, the cantor recite Kaddish, if this person insists on beginning with the initial Amen, he has he does have a halachic basis to justify himself. Because again, if he wants to start with Amen, he does have it. But technically speaking, he should start with Yehe Sheme Raba. The reason why is because that Amen is going back on the beginning. So since that Amen Yehe Sheme Raba, that Amen is going back on the beginning of the Kaddish, if he didn't hear the beginning of Kaddish, how's he saying Amen? Right? How could he say Amen? Exactly. So therefore he said, no, but there still is something to do with Amen. Yeah, he does have something what to rely on. Look at 399, we're almost done. It says here the Ben Ish Chai rule, that if someone enters the synagogue and finds the congregation responding to Kaddish, he should join them. He added that the poskim debated whether he is to respond to Amen Yehe Sheme Raba or to skip out the Amen at the beginning. If he would respond Amen, it's Amen Yetumah. The author discussed this issue in the Kapziel, and he ruled both opinions are acceptable. For each one as a basis in the halacha. That Rishon LeZion also cited poskim, who ruled that the person may recite Amen if he can quickly think of the initial words of the Kaddish, so that the Amen will be directed to those words, although he did not actually hear them. Then he quoted the Rav Chida, that he said if someone heard people responding Amen to the blessing, and he did not hear himself, he cannot say Amen, since it's considered Amen Yetumah. So therefore, then afterwards he comes and he says, since the Chazan is saying it on behalf, the Kav HaChaim Sofer comes and he concurs with this. Based on this, Manan Rishon LeZion ruled that one must not respond Amen in this case. One should respond only to Yehe Sheme Raba. Nevertheless, he says if someone insists on saying Amen, he does have what to rely on. And this concurs with the Ben Ish Chai. The Kav HaChaim Sofer, however, ruled that you're not allowed to answer Amen. So it's a machlok between the Ben Ish Chai, right, and the thing. The Halacha Brura. The Halacha Brura comes and he says that as long as a person knows exactly to which blessing he's responding, he could say Amen with the congregation, even though he did not hear the blessing at all. So even if some people did come and already finished responding Amen, he may still join the congregation as long as most of them are still saying the word. So this is in contrast to the more stringent rule of the Rishon LeZion and the Kav HaChaim, saying not to say Amen. As the discussion in this halacha, the author explained that the poskim debated whether the rules applies to the identical blessings or not to Kaddish or not. If the person enters the synagogue in time to hear the cantor say the words V'imru Amen, so then it's mashma from the Ben Ish Chai that you could answer. Okay, so if the cantor has begun the sentence of Yehe Sheme Raba, anyone who enters the synagogue at that point should definitely not respond Amen, since the Chazan already started the beginning this new sentence. It's no longer responding, but rather it's like compared to the case where he's actually starting again. So therefore, obviously, you should not start with this whatsoever.